The story of the Ottoman Empire is not just a tale of sultans, vast armies, and breathtaking cultural achievements, it is also marked by harsh systems of law and punishment that reflected the brutal realities of power in centuries past. Like many empires of its time, the Ottomans enforced order through methods that today seem shocking and deeply inhumane. Yet, in their era, such punishments were seen not only as justice, but as tools of fear and authority, designed to warn entire populations against disobedience or treason. In this journey, we'll look at some of the most chilling punishment methods used throughout Ottoman rule, uncovering how these practices shaped society, maintained control, and preserved the power of the state. Among the most horrifying punishments recorded was eye gouging, reserved for crimes that challenged the state itself, such as treason, espionage, or attempts to overthrow authority. This punishment wasn't merely about harming the body. It was meant to destroy a person's identity, dignity, and ability to function in society. Historical accounts, including the writings of the Ottoman explorer and scholar Evliya Çelebi, describe instances where individuals were publicly restrained in city squares while their eyes were removed with sharp metal tools. Crowds gathered not only to witness the act, but to internalize its message: betrayal had a price more permanent than death. To the Ottomans, blindness represented a symbolic erasure. A traitor stripped of sight could no longer observe the world, lead followers, or pose a future threat. Many considered this punishment a fate worse than execution, because it left the body alive while taking away freedom, pride, and purpose. Beheading was one of the most widely used forms of execution in the Ottoman Empire, particularly for crimes involving rebellion, sedition, or high treason. Unlike slower or more torturous methods, beheading was often carried out with swift precision, usually by a skilled executioner wielding a sword or axe. These executions were rarely private. Crowds gathered to witness the moment, turning justice into public theater. It served as both punishment and propaganda, reinforcing the Sultan's unquestioned authority and reminding the population that power flowed from the throne alone. One of the most famous cases was the execution of Sheikh Bedreddin in 1420. Once a respected judge and religious scholar within the empire, he later led a widespread revolt demanding radical social and economic reforms. His growing influence among peasants and soldiers threatened the core foundations of Ottoman rule. After his defeat, he was publicly beheaded in what is now northern Greece, a spectacle designed to crush any future movements inspired by his ideas. Beheading was also common during warfare. After victories, Ottoman commanders sometimes decapitated enemy leaders and displayed their heads as proof of triumph. These grim trophies were sent to the capital as symbols of loyalty and military dominance. While not as outwardly gruesome as executions, falaka, also known as foot beating, was a painful form of corporal punishment used across many layers of Ottoman society, from military units to schools. The victim's feet were bound and lifted while soldiers or officials struck the soles with rods. Though often seen as a lesser punishment, the pain could be unbearable. Victims sometimes could not walk for days, yet the punishment left few visible scars. This made falaka especially useful in situations where the empire wished to discipline people without leaving permanent marks. It was not reserved for criminals alone. Students, servants, and even government officials could face falaka for disobedience or misconduct. Its purpose was discipline rather than permanent harm, enforcing order in everyday life. Hanging remained one of the most widely used execution methods throughout the Ottoman Empire, especially for crimes such as armed robbery, murder, rebellion, and treason. These executions were rarely hidden from the public eye. Gallows were often erected in busy marketplaces or central squares where crowds could watch the slow rise and fall of the condemned. The body was sometimes left suspended long after death, serving as a grim reminder of the law's power. The Ottomans also employed brutal variations of hanging. In some cases, victims were hoisted onto hooks or long wooden poles, creating a prolonged and agonizing death. These methods transformed punishment into public spectacle and reinforced a message the empire wanted everyone to remember: crime against the state would be met with ruthless consequences. Another form of punishment, particularly for theft, rebellion, and violent crimes, was amputation of a hand or foot. This was not merely physical retaliation, it was symbolic. The removal of a thief's hand signified the loss of the very tool used to commit the crime. These amputations were performed in public spaces, often in bustling bazaars where traders, soldiers, and ordinary citizens could witness the act. Seeing a person permanently disabled served as a powerful deterrent. The Ottoman legal system viewed this punishment as necessary to protect property, maintain order, and prevent repeat offenses, especially in regions where prisons were limited and long-term confinement was impractical. Among the most extreme and psychologically devastating punishments was emasculation, the removal of a man's genitals. This penalty was reserved for particularly sensitive or politically charged crimes, including sexual offenses, betrayal within palace circles, or acts that challenged moral order. In a deeply patriarchal society where honor, lineage, and masculine identity were closely tied to social status, emasculation was considered a punishment worse than death. The victim not only suffered permanent physical harm, but also lost the ability to produce heirs, stripping him of legacy, pride, and social standing. It was punishment, humiliation, and erasure all at once. Perhaps the most horrifying punishment associated with Ottoman rule was impalement. This method involved forcing a long wooden stake through the victim's body, usually entering through the rectum and exiting through the chest, mouth, or throat. Death came slowly, often over hours or even days, as the victim remained upright on the stake, exposed to public view. Though widely linked to Vlad III of Wallachia, known as Vlad the Impaler and a fierce opponent of Ottoman expansion, the Ottomans themselves also employed this execution method. Impalement was reserved for rebels, traitors, and those whose actions directly threatened imperial authority. Its purpose was not simply execution but psychological warfare, a shocking display meant to terrify entire populations into submission. The variety and brutality of these punishments reveal a complex system of governance built on fear, tradition, and absolute power. Each method served a dual purpose, punishing the guilty while warning the masses. In a vast empire spanning continents, cultures, and religions, harsh justice was often seen as necessary to maintain order. While these methods are horrifying through a modern lens, they also remind us how far human societies have evolved in their understanding of law, dignity, and human rights. To continue exploring more dark and fascinating chapters of world history, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story from the past.